There was this conversation we used to have, always late at night, usually after dinner, when the house had gone quiet and the hum of the refrigerator filled the pauses between our words. She'd lie on the couch, feet tucked under a blanket, glass of wine in hand, and I'd be across from her, sipping decaf from the mug I got at that roadside diner in Arizona. We'd talk about nothing and everything. And sometimes, the conversation drifted to kids. "I just don't think I'm the kind of woman who needs to be a mother to be fulfilled," she said once, swishing her wine like it held deeper truth than either of us could see. I nodded, like that made perfect sense. Like I hadn't been dreaming about naming a daughter after my grandmother or teaching a son how to throw a perfect spiral. Back then, I thought love meant compromise. I figured I'd trade my dream for hers, because wasn't that what grown-ups did? I tucked that hope away like a shirt I couldn't quite part with, folded it neatly, stored it in the back of a drawer, and tried not to think about it every time a friend posted a baby announcement. She wasn't cruel. Not then. Just distant in that way people get when they've made up their mind about something and you're still hoping they haven't. And I never pushed. I didn't want to be that guy, the one trying to change her. I told myself it was enough to just be with her. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party, two people stuck at the bar waiting for drinks. She wore a green dress, the kind that looked like it cost more than my car payment. She was clever and quick, and she laughed with her whole body, back arched, hand to her chest, like joy surprised her every time. I fell hard. We moved fast. A year in, we were married. A small ceremony in Vermont, just family and a few close friends. I remember watching her walk down the aisle with a look that said, "This is what forever feels like." It wasn't. In the beginning, the no kids thing didn't seem like a red flag, more like a yellow one. Something you note, but don't stop for. We were still figuring life out. Our careers, our mortgage, her startup that always needed just a little more funding, a little more time. "We'll see," she'd say sometimes when I brought it up. "Maybe someday, but not now." Someday became a kind of religion for me. I believed in it. I prayed to it. I clung to it like people cling to the idea that things will get better if they just wait long enough. There were signs. Subtle, quiet things that only scream in hindsight. Like how she'd stiffen at baby showers. How she'd find reasons not to visit friends who had young kids. How she'd leave the room when diaper commercials came on. I told myself she just wasn't ready. Or maybe she was scared. I read books about how to support your partner through ambivalence. I listened to podcasts. I waited. And then one day, I stopped waiting. I accepted that it wouldn't happen. Not with her. Not in this life. I started saying things like, "It's okay. I've got you. That's enough." She kissed me on the forehead like I was a child who didn't know better. But something shifted about a year ago. Her eyes lit up in this new way when she talked about work, specifically about one of her colleagues, Adrian. I'd never met him, but I heard enough to build a mental image. He was so intuitive, so emotionally intelligent, so funny in this dry, unexpected way. I told myself not to be paranoid. Then she started staying late. Not dramatically late, not enough to raise suspicion, just late enough to fray the edges of routine. She stopped asking me to pick her up from the station, started locking her phone, changed her passcode, stopped saying we, and started saying I. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have proof. And I didn't want to be the kind of man who accused without evidence. So I waited. Again. Then one afternoon, everything cracked open. It was a Sunday. I was folding laundry. She was out, getting coffee with a friend. I was scrolling through Instagram absent-mindedly when a photo popped up in a tagged post from some artsy restaurant I'd never heard of. A group shot. Wine glasses. Smiles. And there, near the edge of the frame, was her, hand resting on a man's knee. A man I recognized immediately from a few stray photos on her phone. Adrian. And in her other hand, a tiny, unmistakable bump. Barely noticeable. But now that I'd seen it, I couldn't unsee it. The caption read, "Brunching with the dream team before baby arrives. Hashtag grateful hashtag new beginnings." I stared at that photo for a long time. Not angry. Not even sad, at first. Just hollow. Like the air had been pulled from my lungs. Like I'd been holding my breath for years and didn't even realize it until that moment. She hadn't told me. Not a word. She was pregnant. And she wasn't just pregnant. She was proud. Radiant. Smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. It hit me slowly, like frostbite. It wasn't that she didn't want kids. She just didn't want them with me. The house was still when she came back. Lights slanted across the kitchen tile, catching on the specks of dust in the air, the kind you only notice when the truth is too loud to ignore. She walked in like it was any other Sunday, set her keys on the hook, took off her coat, kissed me on the cheek like she hadn't just smiled into someone else's future a few hours ago. "How was your morning?" she asked. I didn't answer. I was looking at my phone, not the photo anymore, but the comments. The congratulations. The emojis. The ones that said, "You'll be amazing parents." The ones that tagged Adrian and her, not even bothering to hide it. "You didn't tell me," I said quietly, almost more to myself than to her. She turned, slowly. "Tell you what." I held up the phone. Her expression didn't change right away. It was like she was weighing her options, calculating the distance between the truth and the version she'd prepared in her head. She blinked once. Then again. "I was going to," she said finally, and her voice cracked, not with guilt, but with the exhaustion of being caught too early. "How long?" She didn't answer. "How long have you been seeing him?" Still nothing. I nodded, a tight, small gesture, like I was trying to keep my head from exploding. "And the baby?" Another pause. Then, 16 weeks. I did the math. It lined up. "You're 4 months pregnant," I said slowly, like I needed to hear it out loud, like the number would somehow make it less impossible. "Yes. And you never told me." She sat down at the counter like her legs had stopped working. I didn't know how. I wanted to scream. Break something. Demand some kind of reason that would make the betrayal make sense. But all I could think about was how many nights I'd spent hoping she'd change her mind, and how many of those nights she was probably already carrying his child. "Why him?" I asked. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Not with malice. Not with regret. Just resignation. "Because he saw me," she said softly. "Because with him, I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't feel small for wanting more." That one stung. Because I remembered how many times I'd stayed silent, thinking that was love. Thinking that sacrificing my dream meant I was making space for hers. And all the while, she mistook that silence for indifference. For weakness. "I never made you feel small," I said, and it came out tighter than I meant it to. She looked down at her hands. "You didn't have to." There was no screaming. No big fight. Just silence. The kind of silence that wraps around you and tells you everything you need to know. She packed a bag that night. I didn't ask her to stay. I didn't beg. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the spot on the wall where we once hung a painting from our honeymoon in Florence. The one with the sunflowers and the cobblestone alleyway. Before she walked out, she stopped in the doorway. "I didn't plan this," she said. "But you didn't stop it, either," I replied. She nodded once. Then she left. After that, the house felt too quiet. Her toothbrush still in the bathroom. Her slippers under the bed. Her scent still lingering in the hall. It's strange how absence can fill a space more than presence ever did. I kept going through the motions. Work, groceries, bills. But it was like I was watching someone else live my life, and I was just a ghost in the background. People asked about her. I said we were taking time apart. No one pushed. 2 weeks later, a package arrived at the door. No return label. Inside was a manila envelope. Ultrasound photos. A letter. It wasn't an apology. Not really. More like a confession written in soft pencil. She said she never stopped caring about me, but she realized that caring wasn't the same as loving. That she had spent years waiting for something to shift between us, and when it didn't, she convinced herself she could live without it. "I didn't lie to you," she wrote. "I truly didn't want kids. Not the way you did. Not when I felt like we were just standing still. But then something happened. Something changed. And I don't know how to explain it other than to say, it wasn't about having children. It was about who I wanted to build a life with." She didn't even sign the letter. I sat on the floor of the living room for a long time, holding that ultrasound in my hands. That blurry, grainy image of a child who would never know me. Who would grow up calling another man dad. Who would never hear the stories I had once dreamed of telling. And that's when it hit me. She hadn't changed her mind. She had just changed her audience. I didn't see her again after that letter. Not for a while. Weeks turned into months. Seasons changed. Her shoes stopped gathering dust by the door. Her side of the closet looked like a retail display I never touched. Grief has a rhythm no one tells you about. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just persistent. You wake up, and for a split second, you forget. And then it comes back. The silence. The absence. The question, was I not enough? I went back to therapy. Not for the breakup, not really. For the way I kept questioning my own worth. For how easily I'd surrendered every part of myself, thinking it was love. And for how terrified I was that maybe she was right. Maybe I had made her feel small. Maybe I had made us stand still. But deep down, I knew. I wasn't the man she didn't want kids with. I was just the man she didn't want to build her version of life with. And that hurt in a way I still struggle to name. The closure didn't come in a single moment. It came in pieces. In the mornings, I didn't check her social media. In the nights, I no longer reached for the space where she used to sleep. In the way I stopped talking to her through unsent texts. I didn't hear from her until spring. I was in line at the coffee shop down the street when a notification popped up. A tagged photo. Adrian again. Him and her. This time, holding a baby girl in a white dress. A garden in the background. Her smile, wide and bright. The caption, "Welcome to the world, Ella Grace. You are so loved." I stared at that photo for a long time. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just acceptance. I saved the picture. Not because I wanted to remember it, but because I needed to feel the finality of it. Like closing the last chapter of a book I didn't realize had already ended. A few days later, she texted me. Just 3 words. "I hope you're okay." I stared at those words, trying to decide if they were for me or for her. If they were guilt or grace. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't unearth everything I'd already buried. But I did write something that night. A message I never sent. A kind of letter, maybe. Just for me. I'm not okay. Not always. But I'm getting there. I've stopped trying to understand why I wasn't enough for you. Because I am enough. I know that now. I would have made a good father. I would have told bedtime stories. Braided hair with trembling fingers. Stood at every recital. I would have loved our child so much it would have scared me. But she's not mine. She's his. And maybe that's okay, too. Because I'm not the man in that photo. I'm the man who loved quietly, lost quietly, and who's learning, quietly, how to begin again. I printed that letter, folded it into my journal, and every now and then, when the ache returns, the one that feels like a phantom limb, I read it. Not to remember her, but to remember me. Who I was. Who I am. Who I'm becoming. Some people say the cruelest thing she did was hide the pregnancy. But I don't agree. The cruelest thing was letting me believe I wasn't someone you build a family with. That my gentleness was weakness. That my stillness was stagnation. She didn't want kids with me. That's true. But someday, maybe not soon, maybe not even in this life, someone will. And this time, I won't fold my dreams to fit someone else's silence.